Imagine hiring like an elite security firm to negotiate with the hackers who are holding your company's most sensitive data ransom.
Right. You're in total panic mode.
Exactly. You bring them in, and then you find out your trusted negotiator is secretly texting your bank account balances directly to the attackers.
I mean, it sounds completely made up.
It sounds like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, but it actually just happened in real life.
Yeah, it really did.
So, welcome to Calm Coding. This is the weekly cybersecurity show where we cover the latest news and stories. And today, we're looking at a stack of reports that, honestly, they challenge everything we assume about how safe our networks actually are.
It's a heavy stack today.
It is. We're getting into what happens when the incident responders you hire are actually the attackers themselves.
Which is terrifying.
Completely. And then we'll explore how an AI finding, like every single bug in a code base overnight, might actually create this terrifying new bottleneck for developers.
Yeah, the classic case of being careful what you wish for.
Right. We're also going to ask why the physical hardware sitting in your server room is just a total mystery to the people running it. And finally, we will examine the real-world fallout when a government agency loses 19 million static identity records.
Yeah, it is a fascinating stack of stories because they all connect back to this one central theme, which is visibility.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, whether we are talking about human visibility, code visibility, or, hardware visibility, the common thread here is that organizations are operating blind in ways they don't even realize.
And attackers are just exploiting those gaps.
Exactly.
So let's start with the most foundational layer of trust, which is the human layer. Because when a massive corporate network gets breached and locked down by ransomware, I mean, it is absolute chaos inside that company.
Oh, totally. Everything stops.
Right. Companies panic. So they bring in specialized third-party experts to save them, right, to negotiate with the hackers and recover the data.
That's the standard playbook.
But we just saw a case where the savior was actually the threat. And the details on this are just wild. So back in 2023, there was a 41-year-old man from Florida named Angelo Martino.
Okay.
And he was hired by 5 different companies. His job was basically to help them negotiate with the operators of this really infamous ransomware gang.
Ah, Black Cat, also known as ALPHV.
Yes, exactly.
Just to give some crucial context on Black Cat for you listening at home, they were like one of the most prolific ransomware as a service operations out there.
Yeah, they were huge.
They operated almost like a dark web franchise. They would target large enterprises, encrypt everything, steal highly sensitive data, and then demand these massive payouts in cryptocurrency.
Right.
And they were known for being incredibly aggressive with their tactics.
So Martino gets hired to sit at the negotiation table on behalf of the victims, right?
Right.
But instead of helping his clients, he secretly fed confidential information back to the Black Cat attackers. Yeah. He was feeding them the victims' internal negotiation strategies, like telling them exactly what the company was planning to do.
That's so incredibly damaging.
And it gets worse.
Yeah.
Most devastatingly, he was telling the hackers the exact limits of the victims' cyber insurance policies.
Oh, man.
So by doing this, he helped the attackers extract the absolute maximum ransom payouts possible.
Because they knew exactly how much money was on the table.
Exactly. But it actually goes even further than that.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Martino, along with 2 co-conspirators, this guy Ryan Clifford Goldberg, who was a former incident response manager, and Kevin Tyler Martin. The 3 of them actively deployed the Black Cat ransomware against victims themselves.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So what's fascinating here is they weren't just playing both sides of the negotiation. They were actually originating the attacks. I mean, they were the ones breaking in, locking the doors, and then offering to sell the victims the key.
It's unbelievable. So the trio ended up laundering roughly $1.2 million in Bitcoin. But the Department of Justice recently stepped in, and they seized $10 million in assets from Martino.
10 million?
10 million. And the list of seized assets is just surreal to look at. Like, obviously digital currency and luxury vehicles.
The usual stuff.
But also a food truck and a high-end luxury fishing boat.
A food truck? That's oddly specific.
Right. So all 3 men have now pleaded guilty, and they face up to 20 years in prison. Sentencing is scheduled for mid-2026.
Wow.
But okay, let's unpack this, because this fundamentally breaks the incident response model.
Completely.
This is like hiring a firefighter who turns out to be the arsonist,
Yeah.
or playing a high-stakes poker game where the dealer is just texting your hand to your opponent under the table.
That's exactly what it is. Because, the game theory of ransomware negotiations relies entirely on information asymmetry.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, the attacker doesn't actually know how much cash the victim has on hand, right?
Okay.
Or what their insurance policy covers. So the victim's entire strategy is to basically cry poor.
Right. Pretend you're broke.
Yeah, to convince the attacker that a $3 million ransom will bankrupt them, so they can really only afford, like, $500,000.
Got it.
But when an insider leaks that the cyber insurance policy covers exactly $5 million, I mean, the negotiation is over before it even begins, Black Cat knew exactly how far they could turn the screws.
It completely destroys the premise of third-party incident response, because that whole industry relies entirely on absolute confidentiality and trust.
Yeah.
Like, how can organizations ever trust these external teams again when the financial upside of collaborating with a ransomware cartel completely eclipses their legitimate consulting fees?
That's the real problem. The structural implication of the modern insider threat has evolved so much.
How so?
Traditionally, an insider threat was, a disgruntled employee walking out with a flash drive full of trade secrets because they got passed over for a promotion or something.
Right, the classic corporate espionage thing.
Exactly. But today, the gig economy of modern cybercrime has completely blurred the lines between legitimate corporate cybersecurity professionals and dark web operators.
Right.
You have highly skilled individuals who just seamlessly transition between defending networks during the day and extorting them at night.
It's wild. But, I mean, if human defenders have a price tag and they can be compromised by sheer greed, you would think the solution is just, removing humans from the equation entirely.
Well, that's certainly what the tech world is trying to do. They are increasingly turning to machines to review our systems.
Yeah, specifically relying on flawless AI code scanners to solve these trust issues.
Right.
But Mozilla just found out that fixing one bottleneck creates a terrifying new one.
It really does. The transition from a human-driven code review to machine-driven code review is fundamentally altering the economics of cybersecurity. And this recent experiment by Mozilla perfectly illustrates the chaos this introduces.
Right, so let's get into what Mozilla did. They handed over the source code for its Firefox web browser to an early version of Anthropic's Claude Mythos Preview AI.
Okay.
They essentially just told the AI to hunt for vulnerabilities in the code. And the results were staggering. In just one single round of testing, the AI successfully found 22 security-sensitive bugs.
22?
Yeah, alongside 90 other standard bugs. And just to note, Mozilla did fix those sensitive bugs before their latest release.
Well, that's good at least. But finding 22 high-severity vulnerabilities in a mature, heavily scrutinized code base like Firefox, I mean, that is an incredibly difficult task.
Right, this isn't some new app built in a weekend.
Exactly. So Mozilla concluded that this AI model is every bit as capable as the world's elite security researchers.
Now, we've had automated tools before, right? Things called fuzzers.
Oh, yeah. Fuzzers have been around forever.
But for people listening who might not know, a fuzzer essentially just throws massive amounts of random data at a program to see if it crashes.
Right. It's just a brute force tactic.
Exactly. So fuzzers often miss the complex logical pathways. But Mythos is entirely different.
Yeah.
Because it can actually reason through the source code.
Yeah, that reasoning capability changes everything.
Right. It traces how different parts of a system interact. It understands that, like, if a user inputs a specific string over here, it might cause a memory leak in a completely unrelated function way over there.
Which is exactly what human researchers do. It's just much faster.
Right. And historically, attackers have always had the advantage because they only need to find one bug to break in, while defenders have to find every single bug to stay secure.
Yeah, the classic defender's dilemma. So, on paper, making bug discovery cheap and fast theoretically erodes the attacker's advantage. You deploy an AI, it maps out all the logical flaws, and your code base becomes a fortress.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Yeah.
Finding hundreds of bugs all at once creates what is being called a bug bottleneck.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the security teams suddenly know about all these critical flaws, but they simply do not have the human bandwidth to actually fix them all immediately. Right.
It's like, okay, imagine turning on the lights in a dirty, abandoned kitchen. Suddenly you can see all the roaches at once, but you still only have 2 hands to swat them. So what does this all mean for the developers who actually have to fix these?
Well, it means the bottleneck in cybersecurity has abruptly shifted from discovery to remediation.
Okay, remediation meaning fixing the code.
Right. Imagine a developer logging into work, checking their Jira board, their daily task tracker, and suddenly seeing it lit up with 112 critical vulnerabilities overnight.
I would quit.
Right. It is an operational nightmare because you can't just slap a Band-Aid on a complex browser engine.
No.
Every single patch has to be carefully written, tested for regressions, and deployed in a way that doesn't break the functionality of the software for millions of users.
That takes a lot of time.
Right.
But wait, if Mythos is commercially available, doesn't that mean the ransomware cartels we just talked about can use it to find the exact same bugs? If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the really uncomfortable reality that Mozilla kind of glossed over in their enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Attackers have access to these exact same AI tools. Mozilla is celebrating that they can find their own bugs faster. But if an elite AI model can reason through the Firefox codebase and find 22 critical zero-day vulnerabilities.
And 0 days meaning flaws that the software vendor has 0 days to prepare for because they are entirely unknown, right?
Exactly. So if it can find those, a state-sponsored hacking group can point that exact same model at any other piece of critical software. They can find the bugs first.
Oh, wow.
We have basically entered an era where defensive AI is just racing against offensive AI.
And if the offensive AI finds the bug and the defensive AI finds the bug at the exact same time, the attacker still wins.
Pretty much.
Because the attacker only takes a millisecond to write a script to exploit it, while the defender takes weeks of human engineering time to write, test, and distribute a patch. The discovery of the vulnerability is now automated and near instantaneous. But the mitigation is still manual and painfully slow.
Yeah, but code is really only one part of the equation here.
Right.
It's great that AI can perfectly scan software code and map out all these logical flaws, but the software has to run on physical hardware.
Right, the actual boxes.
And the physical boxes routing that code are often a complete mystery to the people operating them.
And that brings us perfectly to the hardware layer. So the FCC has recently instituted a ban on procuring foreign-made routers. They framed it as a critical supply chain security necessity.
Which, makes sense.
Yeah, the government doesn't want foreign adversaries having backdoor access to the hardware that routes American internet traffic. On the surface, that sounds like a totally reasonable precaution.
Sure.
However, there's a huge catch. The ban only applies to new purchases.
Ah.
Yeah, it doesn't force companies to remove the foreign routers that are already humming away in their server racks right now.
And that loophole exposes a much deeper systemic issue within IT operations.
Definitely.
Cybersecurity expert Meg Gleason wrote a really brilliant analysis pointing out that this ban highlights a massive operational risk. Most organizations literally do not know what is running on their networks.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
She notes that routers typically sit in server rooms for 10 to 15 years.
10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Over that decade, operators just make these incremental configuration changes, right?
Yeah.
Like a firewall rule is added for a temporary vendor and it never gets removed.
It happens all the time.
Interfaces are added, access rules get updated, temporary fixes are put in place, but the documentation almost never keeps pace. So organizations are operating without a reliable blueprint of their own infrastructure.
Yeah, this phenomenon is known as configuration drift.
Configuration drift.
Yeah, it is the messy reality of IT turnover. The person who originally deployed the router back in, say, 2011 left the company in 2015.
Right.
And the team managing it today is just terrified to touch it because they don't fully understand what critical legacy systems actually depend on it.
Oh, so they just avoid it.
Exactly. This creates a culture of what Gleason calls uptime anxiety. They just leave the box running and build new routing rules on top of the old ones, rather than risk taking the company offline by rebooting or replacing it.
So basically, these networks resemble a house that's been renovated room by room over a decade, but nobody kept the blueprint.
That's a great way to think about it.
Like new wiring is just layered on top of old wiring. You flip a switch in the kitchen and somehow the garage door opens.
Exactly. And because of this accumulated technical debt, network blind spots usually only become visible under immense stress.
Right.
You only discover a hidden dependency when there is a catastrophic outage, or when a routine system change unexpectedly causes a massive failure. And Gleason points out that hackers rarely even need complex James Bond-style supply chain access.
Like a secret foreign microchip implanted at a factory or something.
Right.
Because they don't need it. Standard everyday operational failures give them an easy way in. We're talking about things like default administrative credentials.
Oh, yeah. Just username admin, password.
Exactly. Stuff that was never changed. Or exposed management interfaces that accidentally face the public internet. Or firmware that just hasn't been patched since, like, 2018.
Yeah.
Hackers exploit these basic failures regardless of where the router was manufactured.
This raises an important question, though, about government policies. They often look incredibly decisive on paper, right?
Sure, banning foreign tech feels like a strong, definitive action against an adversary.
But it completely fails to address the messy human reality of daily IT operations. If a network engineering team has no visibility into their own infrastructure, if they're leaving default passwords on 15-year-old hardware because they are too scared to touch it, then a domestically manufactured router is just as dangerous as a foreign one.
Yeah.
Supply chain risk only matters if your operational hygiene is already flawless.
It all comes down to the foundation. You can install an American-made steel door, but if the Volt's blueprints are lost and the back door is propped open with a brick, the origin of the steel doesn't matter.
No, not at all.
So we have human trust breaking down with insider threats. We have software layers riddled with unfixed bugs discovered by AI.
Yeah.
And we have underlying network hardware that is just a tangled, undocumented mess.
It's a bad combination.
It really is. When you combine all these vulnerabilities, massive data breaches aren't just a possibility, they are an absolute inevitability. And the ultimate victims are rarely the corporations or the government agencies.
No.
The ultimate victims are everyday citizens.
Yeah, the downstream effects of these systemic failures always land on the individual. And a perfect example of this just unfolded in Europe, demonstrating exactly how these underlying flaws manifest into real-world damage.
Right. So France Titres, also known as ANTS, is the French government body responsible for managing official identity in registration documents.
Okay.
And they recently suffered a massive data breach. A hacker operating under the name Breach Third posted on a dark web forum selling 19 million highly sensitive records.
19 million records from a national identity agency. I mean, that is a staggering volume of personal data.
Yeah, it is. And the details of what was stolen are chilling. The data includes people's full names, postal addresses, birthdays, gender, civil status, and contact details from both private and professional accounts.
Wow.
But here is the part that ties back to our hardware and software blind spots. The agency confirmed the data theft, but they stated that the hackers didn't actually gain access to the user portal itself or to the individual user account.
Wait, so they bypassed the front door entirely?
Exactly.
You know, modern government and corporate systems rely really heavily on interconnected APIs.
Yeah.
APIs are essentially the digital delivery doors that allow different pieces of software and external databases to talk to each other and share information automatically.
So if I use an analogy, think of a restaurant.
Okay.
The user portal is the dining room, right? Highly secure, guarded by a host, well lit, with cameras everywhere.
Right.
But the backend API is the delivery door in the alleyway, where the kitchen gets its ingredients. The hackers didn't fight the bouncer at the front door. They just found an unlocked delivery door in the alley that was communicating directly with the freezer.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
This is how misconfigured backend architecture leads to these massive leaks.
Yeah.
If the hackers didn't actually breach the portal itself, but they still walked away with 19 million records, it just shows how interconnected and leaky these databases really are.
Absolutely.
But what makes this breach particularly devastating is the concept of static data. A stolen credit card is dynamic, right?
Oh,
You can call your bank, cancel it tomorrow, and the hacker's data is suddenly worthless.
right. It's annoying but fixable.
But civil status, gender history, and birth dates, you're stuck with those forever. What does this mean for the everyday person listening to this right now?
Well, because this data never expires, it enables cybercriminals to play a very patient, long-term game. The French agency correctly warned that this static data is just the perfect ammunition for highly convincing spear phishing attacks.
Like targeted emails.
Exactly. If a hacker sends you an email demanding a fraudulent wire transfer, and they can quote your exact civil status, your birth date, and your previous home addresses, that email is going to look incredibly legitimate.
It elevates identity theft from, like, a quick cash grab to a sophisticated multi-year manipulation of an individual's digital life.
It really does.
We've really gone on a journey today, exploring these hidden layers. We started by looking at how human trust can be completely subverted from the inside, with negotiators actively working for the ransomware cartels they were hired to fight.
Yeah.
We looked at how AI like Mythos is pulling back the curtain on software development, revealing vulnerabilities so quickly that human engineers can't possibly keep up with the remediation.
Which is terrifying.
And then we explored the physical layer, realizing that organizations are running critical operations on decade-old hardware they don't even understand.
Yeah.
And finally, we saw the real-world cost of all these blind spots. 19 million static, unchangeable identity records just floating around the dark web. It really highlights how true cybersecurity requires visibility at every single level.
I agree. The holistic visibility is really the only way forward. But, looking at the trajectory of these tools, especially the AI code scanners, it leaves me with a rather provocative thought about where we are heading.
Okay, lay it on me.
If defensive AI models like Mythos eventually become so sophisticated that they can not only find, but instantly and automatically patch every software vulnerability the moment it is written, then the software code will become an impenetrable fortress.
In theory, yeah.
And attackers naturally follow the path of least resistance. So it makes me wonder if the hackers of tomorrow will abandon code altogether and strictly target the legacy, undocumented hardware we forgot about and the inherent flaws in human psychology.
Oh, wow.
Like, in a world of perfect machine code, the messy, unpredictable human element might become the only viable attack vector left.
That is profound. If the math is perfect, the only thing left to hack is the human.
Yeah.
You could build the most technologically advanced digital fortress in the world, perfectly impenetrable by any machine. But it simply doesn't matter if you can just bribe the guard to hand over the keys.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this week's discussion on calm coding. We really hope this conversation gave you some new tools to think about the systems you rely on every day. Stay curious, stay secure, and we will catch you next week.